And we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Israelit, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I would be delighted. I pledge allegiance
to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to roll call. Ms. Brewer, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Israelit,
here.
Commissioner Johnson. Here. Chair Martos.
Here. And for the record, Vice Chair Couchy is not here tonight. So we'll go to approval of minutes, April 10th minutes and May 8th minutes. I hope, Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the minutes. And if there were any changes, you sent those to Ms. Brewer for the record. And so let's see, which meeting wasn't I at? I wasn't at the April meeting, so I can't vote on that, but I'll allow one of the other commissioners to make a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I second.
all right. Commissioner Brown in favor?
I am in favor.
Okay.
10th.
Okay, so I will say by unanimous consent, you do not have to do that the minutes of April 10th are approved. Move on to the minutes of May 8th, likewise, but I was there that night, so I can vote. Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes for that meeting.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
All right, motion to approve, seconded.
And I was absent from that.
You were absent, so that leaves it up to me as the
Hmm.
deciding factor, and I will approve those minutes. So by unanimous consent, those minutes are approved. All right, we will move on, rapidly moving on here. We'll go to public comment, and for the public, one person in the audience. You may speak on any item that's not on our agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. Ralph M. Brown Act, State Local Agency Open Meeting Law prohibits our commission from acting on any matter that's not on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a request to speak form in the back of the room and bring them to Ms. Brewer. Provisions of your name, address, and other identifying information is optional. Any speakers? Seeing none. Anything, anybody, nothing?
No
Fine.
public comment.
Nope. Okay, no comments. I'll close public comments. We'll move on to, okay, so commissioners, thanks for that glaring look, Mr. Wong. So commissioners, Sergeant Orloff has a personal event this evening, and he asked if maybe we could move the police report up to item 6A, or move it up in front of item 6A. Is
No objection.
any objections?
No objection.
Not
No objection.
But we do want to know, is it a party?
That, I think
Or-
that's,
Are
That's-
some commissioners involved?
no, that's personal, private.
I'm just-
you know. We won't put them that much on the spot. All right, Sergeant Orloff, you have the approval, unanimous approval of this commission to go first.
Wow, I'm grateful. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So for the month of May, there were 13 total collisions report. As always, hit and run collisions. Collisions caused by DUI were filtered out, do not appear in this report. This month, we had 9 collisions with a vehicle and another motor vehicle. 2 involved a fixed object, and 2 collisions involved a bicyclist. Out of all the collisions, 1 resulted in a major injury, and 8 resulted in minor injuries. Surprise, surprise, the most common collision factors were right-of-way violations, unsafe turning movements, and unsafe speed again. You direct your attention to case 1132. The last 4, 1132. This was a vehicle versus vehicle, failure to yield situation, Broadway in the downtown business district area. Motorist number 1 was driving vehicle north on Paloma, approaching Broadway. That driver stopped at a stop sign at the intersection of Broadway. Looked both ways, made a left turn onto westbound Broadway from Paloma and struck motorist number 2 who was traveling westbound on Broadway. The driver stated she could not properly see the incoming westbound traffic due to heavy eastbound traffic. So backup of traffic, and she thought it was clear. She didn't know it was clear, and she collided with the motorist in the other vehicle, causing a minor injury to that motorist. Case 1229 was a unfortunate incident. It was a solo bicyclist. There was a Parks and Rec community bike ride event.
Oh, yeah.
Myself and Corporal Thompson, who was here last week, had the opportunity to escort. And during that ride, there was a lot of children, and we were on the route on Cortez, kind of by OLA school, and there were several children, and the adult rider kind of swerved to avoid one of the children and unfortunately fell off his bicycle and sustained a minor injury, which would complain of pain to his back. That is a collision per the vehicle code. So that was our injury to the bicycle situation. 1238 was our major injury collision that I spoke of. It involved an e-bike. It was versus a vehicle. A juvenile was riding the e-bike eastbound on Broadway, west of El Camino. The motorist was stopped southbound at Bernal, which is a stop sign controlled intersection there, however, not for cross traffic on Broadway. And the motorist did not see the cyclist, proceeded into the intersection and collided with the cyclist. Luckily, the cyclist, even though sustained a major injury, I think it was a broken hand, could have been. So it was a daytime collision. There was no report of cross traffic or any other obstruction, so probably wasn't looking for one. And yeah, that probably led to that. 1245 was a vehicle versus a utility pole. This occurred over on Barrio Way, morning hours. The motorist was driving northbound on Costa Rica, approaching the intersection of Barrio Way. And at that time, the other motorist was driving eastbound on Barrio Way, approaching the intersection of Costa Rica. The motorist traveling north on Costa Rica stopped at the stop sign, saw that it was clear, proceeded into the intersection to make a left turn to westbound Barrio Way as the other motorist was proceeding into the intersection. The second motorist, who was proceeding eastbound on Barrio Way, began to honk their horn to alert the other driver, which caused the driver to swerve out of the way abruptly and lost control of the vehicle, took a wide turn and collided with a PG&E utility pole on the northeast corner of the intersection. That driver did sustain minor injuries as a result of the collision. Those were the notable ones that I took notes for. If you have any other questions about any of the other collisions or locations that you see, you're more than welcome to try to answer.
All right, thank you, Sergeant. Commissioners, questions? Yeah, Commissioner Israelet?
I have a question about the e-bike, juvenile e-bike car incidents with the stop sign. The driver of the automobile stopped, looked, but did not see the bike, speeded and hit the bike. That's a four-way stop, I believe?
It's not.
Oh,
yeah.
so the
The
bicycle,
bicyclist was just proceeding
got it. Okay,
accordingly, and it was a failure to yield situation from it.
thanks.
Other questions? Sergeant, was the e-bike rider wearing a helmet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
It was,
go ahead.
for what it's worth.
Yeah.
We didn't get called to the scene at the time. This was reported by both parties.
Ah, okay.
Caught up with the motorist actually called us first several minutes later when they arrived back home. And they like checked on him, said he was okay, and he just kept going. And then I guess when the juvenile got home, told parents what happened, they took him to the hospital, and then they called us from the hospital, so we were able to put two and two together.
Okay.
Sorry, don't you have to report an injury at the time of incident?
We have a procedure where when we're notified of a collision, it involves an injury, yes, we need to document it. We were not made aware of the injury.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant if you are in a car accident or a car bike accident and there is an injury, my limited understanding of the law is that if there's an injury, report it before leaving the scene.
I think what probably happened, so I don't believe there is a specific law that says that they need to report that. It's one of these things where if both parties say, hey, are you okay? And both of them are in agreement, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm fine. Then I think both motorists have satisfied their obligation per the law to stop. And even if there's no injury collision, if you're involved in a collision, results in damage, or yes, it's per law, you need to stop and at least check on,
Okay.
they get acknowledgement that, hey, they want to exchange information and give them the opportunity to do so. Sounds like in this situation, the juvenile was, I'm okay, I'm good. Are you okay? And the motorist was kind of a boss. They can't force the insurance information.
Right.
Did, you know, so.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. I appreciate it.
So did the e-bike hit the car or did the car hit the e-bike?
Both. That-
Yeah, who impacted who?
And what you're saying. I think I made it a habit, or start making it a habit of printing out the actual sketches because they're useful for me. So I'm a visual person, 1238 I have here. So according to, I don't know if you've ever seen our collision reports, but on like page 1, the vehicles involved in the collision are represented by squares, and we shade in the damage to each vehicle. And the bicyclist had damage shaded on the left side, where the car had damage shaded on the front.
Okay, all right, that answers that. Okay.
See if I printed out the sketch. Sketch doesn't say a whole lot other than what I told you. It's, you know, proceeding south from the stop sign and the other vehicle's proceeding east, no stop sign, and the AO. The broadside collision, damage to the front of the motorist who is proceeding south
Okay,
to this side.
okay. And just a general question about e-bikes. Can Burlingame Police ticket e-bikes for not following the rules of the road?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, so if the bike was speeding, if the bike didn't stop at a stop sign or yield to a pedestrian or something like that, okay.
It is bicyclists. It's surprising how many bicyclists aren't aware of the fact that
Yes.
they are aware.
But they need to follow,
Responsible.
follow the rules of the road.
Yeah,
Culpability.
bicycle as well as e-bikes. Yeah, I mean, the regular pedal ones have to follow the same rules. Yeah, okay.
I will monitor intersections for speeding complaints and stop sign complaints, and I will stop bicyclists
Okay,
doing the same thing.
okay, all right. Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Any other questions for Sergeant?
Just curious, on 1272, the El Camino Adeline collision,
Yep.
do you know what time of day that
In
happened?
the afternoon,
Okay.
it was early afternoon. I actually stumbled upon this myself. It was a large commercial
Mm.
trailer truck. I was trying to turn left from northbound El Camino onto westbound Adeline. I think the driver behind's vision was obstructed, and so it was just the rear end collision.
Got it.
If I got that right. Actually, it might have been the other way around. I think the commercial vehicle ran into the back of
I see.
situation where, you know, a vehicle proceeded, the car in front of the trailer. I think the driver assumed the driver had a clear path to turn, was going to make that motion, so he proceeded to go. Perception, reaction time, didn't have enough time. But
Got it. Okay.
Okay, anything else? No? Sergeant, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yep,
thank you very much.
all right, no problem.
Enjoy your evening back.
All right. We will move on to our regularly scheduled item 6A. The Vision Zero update. Mr. Wong, do you want to do any kind of introduction or? Okay,
I will go ahead.
okay.
Thank you, Chair Martos. And tonight we have, what we've been promising everyone. Yeah, except for yourself, you're a little bit more aware on the
I
inside.
got a preview last night.
But we have the Vision Zero action plan. We've made great strides. And so tonight we're presenting it. We'll give you a little background on it, fill you in, but then get you to where we are now. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Dana Wiseman with Fear and Peers. She'll be presenting tonight. And at the end, when you do have questions, we also have Mr. Sai, who's working on this project. So with that, I will let Ms. Wiseman take over.
Great, thank you. Would you mind pulling up the,
Oops. Oh, I have to do it. Sorry. Darn it. There we go.
great. Well, that's coming up. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to be here tonight to share an update on the Burlingame Vision Zero Action Plan. All right, we can move on to the first slide. Okay. So tonight I'm going to cover the following topics. During a presentation, I'm going to start with a background on the motivations and the goals of the plan. Then I'll talk about the planning process and key outcomes that the city can expect from the effort. Next, I'll share findings from our safety data analysis, and that includes high-level collision trends, a draft high injury network, and draft safety emphasis areas. And then I'll share initial candidate safety strategies, and so those are both infrastructure and programmatic strategies. And finally, we'll wrap up with a look at what's ahead. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll also have some time for discussion, and Michael and I will be happy to answer questions that you have. Next slide, please. So we do have a few key goals for our presentation tonight. The first one is to help build a shared understanding and vocabulary of roadway safety. We'd like to orient everyone to the Vision Zero Action Plan purpose. We'll review some highlights from public outreach and engagement to date. We'll also share perspectives and insights on roadway safety in Burlingame, and together we'll initiate safety strategy identification. Next slide, please. So first I want to start by celebrating the city's commitment to safety. We can move on to the next slide. A little bit of background, Burlingame received a federal grant through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program to develop a Vision Zero action plan, and the city is now in the process of developing that plan. So with this safety plan, the city is establishing its goal of reaching zero fatal and serious injury collisions on its roadways and really reinforcing its commitment to safety. Next slide, please. Burlingame joins a network of cities across the peninsula, as well as across the Bay Area and nationwide, who have committed to the Vision Zero goal of eliminating fatal and serious injury crashes. Here are some examples on this map. Next slide, please. So before I share more about the plan development process for Burlingame, I do want to introduce the Vision Zero concept for those who may be less familiar with it. Vision Zero, first and foremost, sets a goal to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways, and it encourages us to approach roadway safety in a different way than maybe we have in the past, to really take proactive and preventive action. Vision Zero is based on a fundamental principle that loss of life is not an acceptable byproduct of mobility, but it also doesn't demand perfection of us. We are human, we all make mistakes, and instead, the intention is to establish a roadway system that prevents the inevitable mistakes that happen from resulting in severe injury or fatality. Vision Zero is achieved through proactive roadway design, through roadway policy, and other roadway strategies that lessen the severity of crashes. And it requires a multidisciplinary approach and shared responsibility, with all of us contributing to create redundancy such that when one system feature fails, another will be there to save a life. Next slide, please. And this brings us to the purpose of our project. A Vision Zero action plan is an analysis and a strategy document that provides the city with a clear path forward to improve road safety for everyone. It identifies key safety challenges, it identifies ways to address those challenges, and all of that in alignment with the principles of Vision Zero. It facilitates partnerships, engages community members, it works to institutionalize safety as a priority in everything that the city does. And ultimately, it positions Burlingame to receive funding from state and national grant programs. Next slide, please. What you see here is an illustrative example of what a safer street could include in Burlingame. You'll see safety enhancements like curb extensions, center medians, improved lighting, separated bikeways, posted speed limits, etc. Next slide, please. And it's important to note that Burlingame is not starting from scratch. This planning effort builds on the great work that the city is already doing to create safer streets through planning efforts, through various infrastructure projects of both large and small scale across the city, and policy changes. Next slide, please. So what does it mean to develop a Vision Zero action plan for Burlingame? Where will we end up at the end of this planning process? Next slide, please. Yes. So first and foremost, this process will result in a Vision Zero action plan that's intended to inform and guide the city's efforts to enhance safety. We start with a robust analysis of Burlingame's collision history, and that helps us identify key safety challenges and develop a network of safety corridors for targeted investment. And our understanding of the collision history also informs our development of a toolbox of safety infrastructure countermeasures that are tailored to Burlingame's roadway context and also its safety needs. The toolbox then is applied to locations of highest need, and that helps us create a set of prioritized safety infrastructure projects across the city. Important to note that Vision Zero is about more than just infrastructure. We've also conducted a benchmarking assessment of the city's policies and programs and practices to help determine where the city already prioritizes safety in its day-to-day work and where there might be opportunities for enhanced or new initiatives to promote a safety-first culture. And we'll incorporate these programmatic non-infrastructure initiatives into the toolbox and into the action plan that's developed, things like safety educational programs and strategies to effectively integrate micromobility devices into a safe roadway network. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the steps of the Vision Zero action plan development process. We gathered and we analyzed safety data in the first half of this year, winter and spring 2025, and I'll bring the findings from that to you tonight. Then this summer and into the fall, we'll identify safety countermeasures and define priority projects in partnership with the city. In late fall 2025 into winter 2026, we'll prepare and finalize the Vision Zero action plan. And throughout all of this, our team is leading a robust public outreach and engagement effort to really bring stakeholders and bring community members into the planning process. So the input that we receive through the engagement really informs our understanding of the city's safety needs and concerns, and it helps shape the plan's priority projects and strategies. Engagement for this effort is oriented towards three audiences, as shown on this slide: the citywide community, city stakeholders, and community stakeholders. So the first group, citywide community, that includes people who live in, who work in, who visit Burlingame, and we're engaging this group through in-person and also digital strategies that includes pop-up events, a website, online survey. The second group, city stakeholders, are city staff from various departments. We convened a task force to engage this audience, and we're also giving presentations to City Council and Teaspoon to share updates on key project milestones. And then community stakeholders, the third group, these are individuals who represent different community groups or businesses or schools in Burlingame. And we've established a community advisory committee that meets on the same cadence as the task force and discusses similar topics. So we recently completed our first round of citywide public outreach and engagement for the project. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the specific activities that we conducted. And the focus for the first round of engagement was really on soliciting input on safety needs and desired outcomes. We set up a project website and a map-based survey. We hosted 2 pop-up events, one at the Farmers Market and one at Burlingame High School, where we connected with over 100 people at each of those. We posted public displays and distributed flyers at Burlingame Main Library, the Rec Center, and Easton Library. And we promoted the survey and the various events through different channels. We went out through Burlingame e-News, the Burlingame Elementary School District Principals newsletter, Live Play Burlingame, Parks and Rec publications, and also through social media. And we held our first, and we're actively in the process of holding our second CAC and task force meetings. And just want to recognize Chair Martos for being part of our Community Advisory Committee. Next slide, please. The online map survey that I mentioned, that was available on the project website from March through early June. And we publicized it through the various methods that I mentioned on the previous slide. And overall, the online map survey was very successful. We had a lot of participation, over 650 contributions by 250 different people, which is kind of remarkable for a city the size of Burlingame. So that's great. And the image here is a snapshot summary of the comments that we received on the map. The pins show individual comments that are associated with specific travel modes, so green for bikes, blue for cars, etc. And then the light green, yellow, and orange circles show where we saw clusters of individual comments, where the circle color and size represents the number of comments that were captured. So for example, the large orange dots reflect the areas that saw the most number of comments. And you can see with the dots on the image that we received a lot of comments in downtown areas, Broadway, Burlingame Ave, along El Camino and California Drive, and also down on Hillside. And with respect to the website overall, where this online survey was housed, we've seen nearly 1,500 visits to the website by 900 different people. And so again, this really reflects great participation and strong visibility for the project. That's great. Next slide, please. We heard some common themes from the community throughout those outreach events, and showing here a summary of what people said they want to see for things like improved pedestrian safety, for improved bicyclist safety, for improved driving conditions, and for improved safety downtown and along El Camino. So with that, I'd like to pivot and share some of the findings from our roadway safety analysis. So we're about to get into a lot of data and information, and I'll try to go slowly, and we can always come back to any of these slides if someone's interested in seeing them again. So let's start with the first slide. First, before I get into the numbers, a bit about the data that we used. We looked at 5 years of injury collision data for events that occurred on the surface streets in the city of Burlingame. So this includes approximately 560 injury collisions on Burlingame streets from 2020 to 2024. And we utilized 2 different sources of collision data to create one comprehensive collision database. We pulled from the Burlingame Police Department database and also UC Berkeley Transportation Injury Mapping System, or TIMS. And I know that this group is very familiar with TIMS. You've conducted your own collision analysis using TIMS. And so some of the information I present here, I imagine will look very familiar to all of you, since it does align with some of the summaries that you've prepared in your metrics report. I do want to note that the numbers won't line up exactly, and that's because we're using slightly different data sets for it. Ours is a combination of what we gathered from the police department plus TIMS. Next slide, please. So let's start with some high-level collision trends. Between 2020 and 2024, we see an average of 112 people per year injured in a traffic collision in Burlingame. And of those 112 collisions per year on average, 1 was fatal, 9 resulted in serious injury, 96, which is the vast majority, the blue slice in the pie chart, resulted in minor injury, and 6 resulted in complaint of pain. And all of this is based on what was recorded by the reporting police officer. Next slide, please. Yep. Vehicle collisions are the most common in Burlingame. They make up 78% of all injury collisions over the 5-year period. Those are shown in the blue slice of the pie chart on the left of the slide. On the same pie chart, you'll see pedestrians make up 13% of all injury collisions. That's the green slice. Bicyclists, the remaining 9%. That's the red slice. So together, across all injury collisions, pedestrians and bicyclists are involved in 22%. Now that mode proportion shifts pretty dramatically when we move right on the slide to look at the subset of collisions that involve the serious injury or a fatality. So in serious injury and fatal collisions, you'll see in the center pie chart and the one on the right that people walking and bicycling are more represented. The center pie chart shows the mode breakdown for serious injury collisions over the 5-year period. And there you'll see that over 50% of serious injury collisions involve a pedestrian or bicyclist. That's the green slice plus the red slice of that pie chart. And then all the way over on the right, the pie chart on the right shows the 6 fatal collisions that occurred during the 5-year study period. And 2 of those, or 33%, involved a pedestrian. Next slide, please. So who is involved in these collisions? This shows all victims in injury collisions in the yellow bar, and then census data about the population of Burlingame on the red bar. And so you can see in the center that tallest yellow bar, that's people ages 25 to 44 years old, slightly overrepresented in all injury collisions relative to their share of the population. If we go to the next slide, though, which just shows all victims and injury collisions that involve a bicyclist, we'll see that youth are overrepresented in bicyclist injury collisions, with the almost 40% of all bicyclist injury collisions involving someone under the age of 15. Next slide, please. Next, we'll look at when collisions happen. On the left, the blue bar is all injury collisions, and on the right is the subset, including serious injury and fatal collisions. So if we look at the blue bars, we'll see that all injury collisions peak in the late afternoon, so that 3 to 6 p.m. time period. There's a lot of travel, a lot of activity happening on our streets. If we look at the red bar, we see that serious injury and fatal collisions actually peak late in the night. Maybe unsurprising about kind of riskier behaviors or higher speeds or darkness. So next slide, we start to look at how collisions happen. Broadside collisions, we just heard about some broadside collisions, are most common in Burlingame, and they're also the most severe. You can see the broadside collision columns in the center of this bar chart, with both the yellow and the red bars quite high, making up a large proportion of both all injury and serious and fatal collisions. Rear end, I just have a couple more on that slide. No worries, no worries. I just wanted to also highlight rear end collisions, which are quite common. You can see a fairly tall yellow bar among all injury collisions, but they're relatively less severe. You can see the red bar is lower. And conversely, we see head-on collisions all the way on the left of this chart that do also occur among all injury collisions, but they tend to be more common among serious injury and fatal collisions. So I think this nicely shows how kind of a commonness or a commonality of a preponderance of collisions doesn't necessarily always equate to their severity level and kind of the outcomes that we see from those types of collisions. Now we're ready for the next slide. This slide looks at top collision factors. Consistent with what we heard from the police reports earlier, we see unsafe speed. That's the second from the left bar, very common both among all injury collisions and serious and fatal collisions. Also right-of-way violations, both right-of-way for motorists and right-of-way for pedestrians. Improper turning pops up, and driving under the influence. So all very consistent with what we heard from the police officer. And then next slide. Another how one, our final how one. This shows that nearly half of all injury collisions involve a vehicle proceeding straight, although left turns are not far behind. So turning movements also are common among injury collisions in Burlingame. And then among the kind of who, what, how, why, let's get to where in the next slide. I'm going to spend a bit of time on this next slide. So where do collisions happen? So what you're looking at right here is the draft Burlingame High Injury Network that's shown in red on this map, along with red dots for serious injury and fatal collisions in the city during the study period and yellow dots for all other injury collisions. So these corridors that are highlighted in red on the map, they saw 85% of serious injury and fatal collisions and 71% of all injury collisions on city-owned roadways during the 5-year study period. Yet they cover 20% of the city-owned roadways in Burlingame. You may also notice the blue circled corridors. Those are additional roadway segments that are currently under consideration to also include in the high injury network, along with the red network that's already shown on the map. And a little bit about the high injury network. It's a very useful tool in safety analysis. It helps us identify the handful of roadways, in this case 20% of city-owned roadways, that experience the highest concentration of collisions, and in this case up to 85%. And roadways that are included on the high injury network or the HIN become good candidates for targeted safety projects, since safety improvements at these locations have the greatest potential to improve safety outcomes for the city. One thing that you will see in this draft HIN is that it does not include El Camino Real, and that's because the HIN is focused on city-owned streets. El Camino is owned and operated by Caltrans, as we know, and El Camino is a critical roadway in Burlingame, though, and it's worth taking a look at it separately. So let's go to the next slide, please. On this map, El Camino is shown in purple, and it does have a substantial influence on roadway safety in Burlingame. It sees 24% of serious injury and fatal collisions, so almost a quarter, and 28%, over a quarter of all injury collisions in Burlingame. Yet at the same time, it makes up only 4% of the roadway network within the city's limits. Important to note that the process for improving safety on El Camino is different because it's Caltrans owned, not city owned, and Caltrans is undertaking a significant reconstruction project on El Camino right now that includes some meaningful safety enhancements. So El Camino is a different beast, but it is important to consider and look at and highlight and to continue to work towards improving. So before I move on, just a kind of recap of the HIN, a powerful tool for helping Burlingame prioritize high collision locations for safety interventions. It's useful because it measures need based on high collision concentration, so where collisions have been recorded in recent years, and it really empowers the city to respond to location-specific needs. However, also want to flag that the HIN is just one tool, and it's largely a responsive tool. And now I want to pivot to another tool that we're using for the Vision Zero action plan. So another valuable tool for safety planning is something that we call safety emphasis areas. These help the city act proactively with a system-wide perspective. So we've identified 5 safety emphasis areas for Burlingame, and these represent contexts within which we see an overrepresentation of injury collisions. So they reflect characteristics. So whether that's a roadway characteristic or a land use characteristic or a demographic characteristic that's shown to be more likely to experience poor safety outcomes. So even if a specific location hasn't seen a high number of injury collisions and therefore doesn't appear on the HIN, if that location falls within one of these citywide safety emphasis areas, it may be more susceptible to collisions, and it's another potential candidate for proactive safety interventions to act before the collisions occur. So I'm going to walk through the 5 draft safety emphasis areas for Burlingame. Next slide. So first and foremost is the city's arterial roadways. These are shown in blue on the map, and arterials are a type of roadway classification that's designated by Burlingame. You can see on this slide that they make up 22% of the roads in Burlingame, yet they see 80% of serious injury and fatal collisions and 79% of all injury collisions. So this is substantial overrepresentation of collisions on arterials. Most of these roadways are high speed, they're wide, and they have heavy traffic volumes. So all of these factors make arterials not a terribly surprising roadway context for higher likelihood for collisions. Next slide, please. The second emphasis area, signalized intersections. Those are shown as blue dots on this map. These also see a disproportionate share of collisions. Only 8% of the city's intersections are signalized, yet these intersections experience 24% of serious injury and fatal collisions and 38% of all injury collisions in the city. So again, overrepresentation at signalized intersections. Next slide, please. The third safety emphasis area is commercial office and services zoned areas. These are shown in pink on the map. And these are defined using Burlingame zoning designations. They include categories like general commercial, office, auto dealership, hotel, motel, among others. We see overrepresentation of injury collisions in these particular areas of Burlingame. Commercial office and services zoned areas make up 19% of the city's total land area, and they see 40% of serious injury and fatal collisions and 49% of all injury collisions. Moving on to the fourth safety emphasis area. This looks at the areas immediately surrounding or specifically within a quarter mile of schools and parks. These zones or these areas of Burlingame, and in particular, when you look at the areas that overlap, so they're within a quarter mile catchment area of both a school and a park, see an overrepresentation of collisions. And those overlap areas are highlighted in gray on this map. The overlap captures 22% of the city's land area, so areas within the catchment area of both a school and a park, and yet they see 34% of serious injury and fatal collisions and 29% of all injury collisions. So a slight overrepresentation. And then finally, the fifth safety emphasis area, this looks at areas of the city with a high concentration of low income and zero vehicle households. These are defined using census data, and they include block groups that meet a minimum threshold for housing density, so areas that have enough residences, enough households to draw meaningful conclusions. First, the low income areas, those are areas with the lowest average median household income in Burlingame, and the zero vehicle areas are those with the most zero vehicle households. So these areas of overlap, think of them as high concentrations of both low income and zero vehicle households. Those are shown in green on the map. And that area captures 4% of the city's land area, so not much, and it sees 10% of serious injury and fatal collisions and 6% of all injury collisions. So I threw a lot of information at you, a lot of numbers. I'm glad you all have the information in front of you in your packets. And the intention of the analysis is really to understand what trends are we seeing in Burlingame, where are we seeing high concentrations of collisions to act responsively, and location in specific locations, as well as to zoom out and think more holistically and system-wide, where there might be contexts or characteristics that lend themselves more to collisions, and where we can act proactively to address those, that likelihood before the same intensity of collisions actually happens. So there's one more topic that I'd like to present on tonight before we open it up for discussion, and that is roadway safety strategies. So we can move to the first slide of this section. I'll dive in. So we can think about roadway safety strategies in two categories. The first, programmatic strategies, and the second, infrastructure strategies. Programmatic strategies are the policies, the practices, standards, guidelines, programs that support and really prioritize roadway safety in the ways that the city operates. Infrastructure strategies are the engineering projects and the physical improvements that the city puts into the ground. Next slide, please. For the purposes of the Vision Zero Action Plan, we're thinking about three categories of potential programmatic strategies. There's planning and culture, safe roadways and speeds, and safe users. So planning and culture, that captures the city's day-to-day work. It might include potential strategies that are focused on safety data collection and analysis, securing funding for safety projects, monitoring safety efforts and progress, safety trainings, engagement with the community on safety topics. The second category, safe roadways and speeds, that captures the city's work on the roadway network. It might include how the city designs roadway projects, implements safety-related policies, manages speeds, and executes quick build projects. And then finally, safe users, that captures the city's efforts to really enlist all of us in the work of keeping our streets safe. It might include potential strategies that are focused on safety education, on enforcement of key violations, on actions taken after collisions occur, and maybe the role of technology. Next slide. We're getting close to the end. And so we're also thinking about three categories for potential infrastructure strategies. The first is corridors. That's what you see on this slide. This includes engineering countermeasures that are effective at improving safety along corridors. And some examples are narrowing travel lanes, adding median barriers, repurposing travel lanes or road diets, installing separated bikeways, installing speed feedback signs, etc. Next slide. And the second category of potential infrastructure strategies is intersections. And these are engineering countermeasures effective at improving safety at intersections. So some examples shown here: installing leading pedestrian intervals or LPIs that give people crossing the street a head start, installing protected left turns to eliminate conflicting movements, installing centerline hardening and slow turn wedges to slow the speed of turning vehicles, or installing pedestrian refuge islands that give peds a safe place to wait in the middle of an intersection. And now, the third and final category is traffic calming on non-arterial streets. This might include countermeasures effective at improving safety by slowing vehicles in our more residential neighborhoods, things like speed humps or chokers, traffic diverters, traffic circles, or raised crosswalks. So that concludes my presentation and all the information that I wanted to share with you. We've done a lot so far, and we've had a lot of conversations and making great progress. And now is a great time to check in, get your questions, get your thoughts as we pivot towards developing strategies and identifying priority projects for the plan.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wiseman. Appreciate it. So we will allow the commissioners to ask questions this time, and then following that, I'll allow the person in the public if he wants to ask any questions, and then we can discuss. Okay, so let me start with commissioners.
Can I suggest something, Chair Mowertoes?
You may.
Before we ask our questions,
Yep.
One thing, and maybe it's just me, but I wasn't clear on exactly who is currently on the task force. Are you, I'm not 100% sure who you are and who you're, I assume,
Yeah.
you're,
Let's back up.
clarify the
Yeah.
structure for all of us, and then
Sure. Yeah, good suggestions. Did you want to take care of that?
Sure, yeah, and I might hear
Alright.
from Michael reminding me of who are all of our participants if you're.
I am.
We have our community advisory
One.
committee. Yeah, Mr. Martos is part of that. We also have Mayor Stevenson and Council Member Papajohn are on that, as well as representatives from the schools. We have Burlingame High School principal and Burlingame Intermediary School, BIS.
yeah,
A representative from there. We have some members of the community participating, and we have former representatives from commissions like this. We have someone who used to be on the Park and Rec Commission.
Howard.
Down
Wetton.
business,
or what?
the business district, downtown businesses, a couple of representatives from there.
And the representatives from the community, they're just residents of Burlingame? How were they selected? Does anyone know?
Do you want to talk about how they were selected, the people on the committee?
Yeah, the way the CAC was selected was kind of based on past impacts that residents have had in other efforts, like with the planning department, and also just we wanted to. The whole purpose of the CAC was to get a community perspective, so representatives from different sectors of the city. So that's why you see downtown business district, you have the school district, you have the former bike ped chair committee. Yeah, just representation from different areas.
So not just regular residents that weren't involved, some more structured role.
Right. So something, yeah.
There are a couple members of the community. I'm just thinking last night to our meeting when they introduced themselves and they would say, I'm not really sure why I'm here, but I'm interested in safety in the city. And I'm not quite sure how the city identified them. Maybe they raised their hand and have participated in other CACs for other projects.
Thank you. And the reason I'm asking specific questions is just, I want to ensure that the advisory committee is is a fair representation of all interests. So, and in our community, like were there elderly people there? How were these voices selected? So that's why I was just asking. And then you work for Vision Zero. You are an employee of Vision Zero.
So I work for a transportation consulting firm, Fair and Pierce. So we're a planning and engineering firm based in Walnut Creek, offices in San Francisco and San Jose, and so local to the Bay Area. We went through a procurement process with the city. We proposed to work on the project with the city and were selected and have been under contract since maybe November. So we're about halfway through the project schedule. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just
Yeah.
wasn't aware. I missed that little chunk of information. Maybe you guys already knew that, but I just
Oh.
want to. So
Yes, I was going to, another clarifying question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Report. So you've been meeting since the fall with this group.
So we initiated the project in the fall and kind of kicked things off working with the city directly to collect the data, working with the police department to collect the collision data and all the contextual information that we needed. And we had our first community advisory committee and task force meeting in March when we were ready to come to them with some of the initial collision trends that I shared today. So we talked with the group about those initial trends, their reactions, was that resonating, what were we missing, and what would they want to see prioritized in the plan. And then we just had our second community advisory committee meeting last night. We have our second task force meeting on Monday, and we went to that group and we'll go to the task force, the remaining information that I just shared tonight.
And so the task force is separate from the advisory.
The task force is separate from the advisory committee. Yes, the task force is made up of representatives from city departments.
Okay, very good.
Public Works and planning, we have Parks and Rec, we have police, we have fire. So folks who are directly involved in
yeah.
day
And implement.
Okay,
operations of-
wonderful. And just for public record, I believe Vision Zero is a nationwide effort and strategy. I know many cities have been through a Vision Zero program or project or currently. In fact, we'll talk about the project that we're working on in a few minutes with the Accelerated Mobility Program. But many of the cities that were in that offsite are Vision Zero participants, just for public
That's
record,
great.
if that helps.
No, I was wondering because they almost seem to overlap.
Yes.
Yep.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good lead-in questions. All right. So questions about
Context.
or context. Questions about the report. Who wants to start?
I feel like I started, so
Oh,
no,
can I-
if someone else.
Sure, Commissioner Brown.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, you mentioned that we get grants, we're getting grants to actually proceed with a lot of these programs, and by the way, this information is incredible. I mean, my brain can only hold it up, and I'll have to some of this a little bit later, but are these grants federal or state being affected by the current administration?
Cut right to it.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious. I mean, because there is the timing to be done and to be
Yep.
used, right? So that was just one of the questions that I had.
Yep.
Will that slow down the process of Vision Zero? And again, to Commissioner Johnson's point, that's a national program.
Right.
So is it going to slow down the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for the purposes of this project, this Vision Zero action plan that, for which the city received federal funding through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, that money is committed. We don't anticipate this project being impacted by anything going on at the federal level. So we plan to fully execute and kind of deliver on the scope for this federal grant. What it means in the future is hard to say. The Safe Streets and Roads for All federal grant program includes not only funding for planning, but also for demonstration projects and for implementation. So there is opportunity now that the city will have its Zero action plan. It will make you eligible to compete for future funding through the same grant program. And what we're seeing is that while some of the criteria are shifting a bit in what's prioritized for funding for Safe Streets and Roads for All with the new federal administration, the funding is still very much there. And it seems that the federal government continues to be committed to safety. There's a round open right now for funding. It closes at the end of June. And so to be determined what it means for states like California and if we see the same levels of funding that we have in the past. But at least from what we're seeing, we're optimistic that the program will continue kind of throughout its committed 5 years. And there could be opportunities to seek funding in the future through that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to limit myself to only 2 questions. Everyone has them, I'm sure.
I'm going to limit you to 2 questions.
Because I'll probably ask 10.
Exactly. And we have a lot, I'm sure.
But we can maybe have a second bite. if-
Yeah, in the process, there's a lot of information here. Have we looked at how one-way streets contribute or don't contribute to accidents? You know, we do have I'm thinking about San Francisco, the city, a lot. There's a lot of one-way streets in San Francisco. I don't know. And they're part of this. They may be part of Vision Zero as well. Do they contribute positively to less accidents or serious injuries? I don't know. I'm thinking about it as we get Burlingame and possible changes in what we're.
Yeah, maybe you're asking that with specific roadways in Burlingame.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of things going on, but do we look at one-way streets and
Yeah.
do they have a positive effect on?
Yeah, it's a good question. We didn't bring in one-way streets as a potential, I would consider them like a potential emphasis area. So we didn't consider them as an emphasis area. I don't know that we pulled in that data from the city, but that would be interesting to look at. I imagine there aren't that many one-way streets in Burlingame. But
No, there aren't. But
to see if
again, I'm
Back
referencing
then, or-
San Francisco.
Yeah, so then zooming
Comparison.
out,
Oh.
zooming out, one-way streets do tend to see higher concentrations of collisions because they tend to be wider and faster
Mm.
roadways, like more heavy traffic, high speeds, and wide, kind of like the arterials that we looked at as an emphasis area here. In and of themselves, I don't know that there's something like inherent to being a one-way street that makes it riskier or prone to more collision. But I think that the nature of one-way couplets, I mean, they're created to get traffic through faster.
Right.
So I think, we see the repercussions that you're talking about on one-way streets. Yeah. So we can take a look, see what those are in Burlingame and whether they appear.
Thank you.
Mr.
After the other.
You wanted to add something. I think I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Through the chair, I just wanted to add that while we didn't look at it, we, as a commission, we have looked at it at times, and some of the two concerns pop up first. Emergency access, it changes how they get around, so that's why there has to be a greater study on that. And the last time we looked at it for a neighborhood, they had their own access concerns, like the folks at the end didn't want to have to do. We looked at it on Bellevue, so that was something when we shared it with the community on smaller streets. They weren't interested at the time. I mean, that's not to say we don't revisit it, but that's some of the input we've had.
Thank
And I'll just add that as part of our traffic calming and safety around schools, we have created one-way
Hmm.
streets during certain times of the day, drop off and pick up. That seemed to be our best solution to avoiding, congestion as well as increasing safety for the people that are dropping off and children that are crossing streets. So we have done that in a couple of locations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the fact that like in and of themselves, they're not inherently
No,
safe, less safe. It's more just the conditions that they sometimes create.
yeah, and it was mainly to make the circulation
That makes sense.
and keep the traffic moving and
As well as
know what's
drop off.
expected.
'Cause we-
Drop-offs,
drop
pickups.
The other side.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Commissioner Johnson, go ahead.
So I'm excited to see that we're in good company. Do you happen to know with other cities up and down the peninsula, how far they are in their Vision Zero implementation? And was your group directly involved in those projects as well?
Yeah, different, they're all in different places. I'd say most recently, I helped Menlo Park develop their Vision Zero action plan. And they have their plan, they have their priority project locations. They're advancing a number of them that are also part of their TMP that they kind of already had on their radar, but we were able to confirm like these are priority safety projects, and they kind of bump those up. We also, let's see, so Colma has a safety plan that's kind of aging at this point. They're due for a refresh. And Daly City also has theirs, worked on theirs. Sunnyvale was a while back, developed their plan. And I think like the biggest outcome, the most important outcome of these plans usually is this set of prioritized
Right.
project locations. And some communities have been able to advance those priority projects further than others. I'm sure you all know when it gets down to it, the nitty gritty of kind of designing and implementing on a specific corridor at a specific intersection, things can get very complicated.
Mhm.
And so I think different communities have had different success kind of moving their projects through the process and working
Yeah.
with communities to get things built. That's on the infrastructure side. On the programmatic side, some communities like Berkeley, we developed a Vision Zero plan for them a number of years ago.
I'm seeing the changes over there.
And-
My daughter,
Yeah.
my daughter goes to school there, and I
Oh.
was like, whoa, when did that happen? Yeah.
Yeah, and following that, I think the biggest change for them was that they committed resources towards a Vision Zero coordinator
Ah.
in their city. So there's a lot kind of behind the scenes, those are more like the programmatic
Right.
strategies.
And how they operationalize
Exactly.
the
exactly.
study.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the city will
And that was going
get
to
that
be
funding.
my follow-up question with this advisory council,
Mhm.
council or committee?
We call it
Committee.
Community Advisory Committee.
Okay,
CAC.
a CAC.
Okay, yeah.
How much longer will they be involved in this initiative? And has there been discussion about continuing that group from an engagement standpoint in moving forward, no matter how we decide to, continue to organize here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the purposes of developing the plan, we have one more meeting with them,
Okay.
and they'll have an opportunity to weigh in on the priority projects and the strategies that we're proposing in the plan. And then it's kind of a question of what comes next. And I think what's great about a Vision Zero action plan is that one of the most important tangible outcomes is an action plan. So, we commit to do this within this time frame. Here's who we need involved, and here's generally like how much it'll cost and like level of effort and resources required. And so what we often see communities include in their action plan is an action to establish and maintain a task force or a working group or a
Advocacy
safety committee or whatever it is
Mhm.
that sometimes is made up of only internal like agency staff. Sometimes it includes representatives of the community. It really just depends on kind of what feels right. And so the communities that kind of commit to that in their action plan then might establish something like what you're
Right.
describing as a
It's a bit of a leading statement because it will tie to the next presentation, which is why I bring it up about accelerating the good work. So, great, thank you.
it's a great
Okay. Commissioner Israelit?
Thank you for the excellent presentation. You did present a lot of data in a very concise and understandable and digestible way. So first of all, thank you.
Yeah.
Which means that I had a lot of little thoughts as you were going. one thing you mentioned is that these are comments on the data you presented. You mentioned that at signaled intersections, it's only 8% of our roadways, but 24% of our serious and fatal injuries. And I just have lived in other places before moving here, and I just wondered if I'm changing the way our signals work. You know, having all reds for all pedestrians, like a scramble. I mean, I'd like to have somebody kind of look at that, or do we have, you know, red lights start on one street first? The timing can be different, and you know more about that than I will ever. But you know, I think that as our town gets more busy and more congested, that's something that I'd love to have a professional look at. The other thing is, a comment, you mentioned unsafe speed is the most common cause of serious and fatal injuries. And yet we're unable to really patrol for speed in our town because it's hard to have the police staffing that's dedicated for that. And it's been mentioned by one of our city commissioners, council members, that they would love to be able to have some of those mobile speed ticketers that other towns like Phoenix, and I think San Francisco and San Jose.
This cameras?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a new era where we are probably for the foreseeable future not going to have the staffing that we would really need to affect speed and red light running and stop sign running. We just can't. And that concerns me for safety reasons. And then my last comment is that the data you presented was very interesting. I know there's a very, very vocal and active bike contingent who really is pushing for even more bike paths in our town. And I just want to state that the data that you presented tonight said that of the fatal injuries in our town, 33% occurred with pedestrians, 0% with cyclists. And of the serious accidents, 36% involved pedestrians, and half as many, 18%, involve bikes. And I think that information in the past has been misrepresented to this commission, not by you or the city, but I just want to point out that pedestrians are at least of equal value in focusing on and protecting. And I don't hear that enough not from my fellow commissioners, but I just don't hear that enough from those who live in the town. But the numbers speak, you know, I mean, they don't lie, it's facts. And I think we need to really pay attention to that. That's it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Israelit. I had a couple questions. I was curious, so the slide that shows times of day when the collisions occurred, I was curious if there was any analysis on days of the week when collisions occurred, if there's a trend there.
Yeah. We did look at days of the week. I didn't include it because it wasn't terribly interesting.
Okay.
Didn't happen.
Kind of uniformly distributed?
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Isn't like
That's
a
not it.
clear, interesting story
Okay,
there, but you're absolutely right. Day of the week sometimes does tell an interesting story in some communities and help, you know, lead towards certain strategies.
yeah.
But in Burlingame, it wasn't
Okay, so in ours, you did look at it, and in our situation, it's
part of the.
uniform.
Yeah.
Every day was just as good.
Yeah, yeah. I can't quite remember the distinction between weekend and weekday,
Okay,
but it was fairly. It was more uniform than not.
okay, okay. And then I was surprised by something, and that is the high injury data on a couple of streets.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you can go back to that slide. Yeah, with
Which-
the red lines on it.
The
There we go,
Right.
that one. So the ones that I was,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and I'm just thinking, I've been on this commission almost 12 years, and I'm thinking about the sergeant sitting right there and reporting traffic accidents or injuries to pedestrians, bicycles, vehicles, you know, against vehicles against objects. I don't recall many talking about uh, Old Bay Shore Highway,
Mm.
Airport Boulevard, and even Truesdale. So I'm a little skeptical about why those, and now are we saying that this data shows that these are high injury areas from the data? Is that,
That's correct.
is that what's reported? Okay.
Ah.
Okay, so then I'm a little
I can put a little more information on how.
curious why we don't hear that more often in the police department reports when we get those every month.
That I don't know.
Okay,
I can say that this is based on collision data from both TIMS and the police
Yeah.
department,
Mm.
2020 to 2024. So just
Yeah.
a 5-year period. And the way this is intended to capture high concentration locations, so locations that see more injury collisions per mile than other locations, but with a little bit of nuance there, because Vision Zero is about prioritizing the elimination of fatalities and serious injuries, not about eliminating all collisions. There's an acceptance that collisions will happen. It's about reducing the severity so that loss of life or life-altering impact doesn't
Right.
occur. So when doing the calculations for the high injury network, we do weight fatalities and serious injuries more than all other injury collisions. So there might be corridors on here that seem like they don't have quite the same frequency of dots, but if they have a big red dot, they get a bump.
Something bad went down.
okay,
That's one nuance there. The other is that we also give a little more weight to pedestrian and bicyclist injuries, which is
okay,
also part of the Vision Zero ethos and philosophy, which is prioritizing our most vulnerable roadway users and making roadways safer for people walking and biking, also makes roadways safer for people driving and taking transit and other users. So that's the other nuance that maybe if a location didn't have quite as many yellow dots, but a few of them were involved a pedestrian and a bicyclist, that bumps it up as well and helps it have a higher score to then potentially appear
okay,
high injury network.
okay.
So-
Yeah, I would, they, arterials, wide, fast.
Yep.
A lot of traffic. I could see that on those 3 streets I mentioned because they are wide. People drive fast. But I haven't heard the data from the traffic sergeant in all the years that I've been on this commission. But that doesn't mean it's not there. If this is data that's recorded, then it's fact. The other question I had was, let's take Truesdale. It's red from Skyline all the way down to El Camino. So does that mean the entire region or the entire street there is considered high risk or high injury, or are there certain sections that we can focus on? Because I see some other segments, very smaller segments that and that's something that this commission might be able to really study and do something about with the traffic department.
Right.
If you talk about the whole street, okay, now that's a different strategy and a different implementation for traffic calming. But so what's the data tell you? Is it
Yep.
really that entire
Yeah, so
street?
but the conclusion you reached is the conclusion that some of these locations are good candidates for like spot improvements, or
Yeah.
intersection improvements, or looking at a specific block because it has a very unique characteristics. Maybe it's like an on-ramp, it connects to a freeway on-ramp, or it has there's maybe a really complex intersection at one end of it. So those are more location-specific kind of complexities. And others on this map or network lend themselves more towards corridor studies and corridor strategies. So the way that we develop this, it's actually created from a series of every segment on the city's roadway network is scored. Those are quarter-mile segments, eighth-mile segments. They're quite tiny. And I'm debating whether to ask to pull up a slide that's hidden in the slideshow. I don't
Those
hidden-
backup.
The hidden
what you're
slide.
talking about. Maybe let's do that because I think it might illustrate what you're.
Shake up the meeting. a little.
It should be just before the one we're on right now.
Do I have the right?
Going up. I think it should be hidden. Yeah, if you scroll up, keep going up. And up and up. Yeah, it's before we get to the HIN. Yeah, just
Okay.
before this. It's the one that you're just seeing.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Ah.
So every block or segment of the city's roadway network receives a score.
Mhm.
The kind of formula that I was sharing earlier, every injury collision, 2 points, more if it's a fatality, serious injury, a bit of a boost if it's a bike head. And the locations that have scores within, for example, for this high injury network, it was within like the top 15% of scores. They rise to the surface and we start to look at where are those locations, and if they're close enough to each other to make sense to kind of smooth across them, they become a longer corridor. So
Okay.
have like dark red here, dark red here, and dark red here. It's like, okay, I think it makes sense to connect those dots. For whatever reason, probably chance, that segment hasn't seen the same level of collisions. And given that the context is the same for that whole roadway, it probably makes sense to look at the entire roadway. But there are other locations where that's not really the case, and it really is just a specific intersection or a specific block that has that high score. And in those cases, we don't want to pull in too much around it. We really want to focus on that high score segment.
Okay.
This is like a little bit under the hood. I don't know.
Yeah,
Analogy, metaphor.
this map is a little more
Yeah.
informative than just saying the whole street is red. This shows the areas where things should be analyzed further to put in some calming or mitigation or something there. The last question I had was, you've got two stellar traffic engineers here on our city staff. Are there any areas where we've seen things trend down due to some of the mitigation that we've already done? Is you showed, the last 5 years things went up, and I'm assuming because we were in COVID and then all of a sudden we're out of COVID, things go up. But I'd be interested to see if there are any, over the last 5 years, areas of the city where things have trended down as a result of the traffic of the
Calming measures.
calming. Thank you. Yeah. The work that our engineering staff have done in those and this commission as well. So that I don't expect you to have that answer, but that would be something I'd be interested in, which goes to the last part of this. And you and I talked about this last night at the end, is the toolbox, right? There's a number of tools that can be used in different situations to calm traffic, to mitigate risk, things like that. And other than just saying, I think this will work well here, people have been building roads for hundreds of years, right? There's got to be data that says in this context, with this situation, whatever it is, 4-way stop, 3-way stop, 4-lane road, whatever it is, there's certain things in the toolbox that work better than others.
Right.
And those should be the first things that are considered to reduce risk and mitigate traffic problems and increase safety, those sorts of things. So anyway, just my final thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And the countermeasure toolbox, like we talked about,
Yeah,
is a part of this project.
right.
And there are kind of objective, quantifiable metrics that measure the effectiveness of certain safety countermeasures.
Excellent.
We have those and we know those for the different strategies. And then there's also the consideration of in which context is a certain countermeasure most applicable. So there's also that layer when thinking about what to apply where. I think the other piece that's more subjective and what we get out of conversations with the commission like you or with the community members through our engagement is what resonates in Burlingame, because something may be objectively effective, but if it's not something that the city is really interested in, or it doesn't really feel applicable for like the character of the community or something that the community wants to get behind, then we probably don't want to, push too hard for those strategies in the plan. So I think last night someone mentioned like traffic diverters and neighborhood greenways, where the emphasis is more on people walking and biking, and you're diverting vehicle traffic off of those roadways. And like Berkeley, for example, has used those really effectively. It's kind of part of their identity. But I've worked in other communities that they're like, that's not for us. Like, we're not really in that. But objectively speaking, you remove vehicles, you're improving safety, because the chance of collision is lower and the speeds are lower.
Yeah, that's why we have this commission, because when things are proposed and we allow the public to come and voice their opinion on that, right? We may not live in those areas, so we don't have the best understanding of how that'll affect their quality of life. Yeah, so,
Just-
okay,
You made a good point about some of these locations
sure,
already had projects.
yeah,
Projects underway, and I think that's an important thing to consider. This is the HIN that we were looking at before.
Yeah.
Purely quantitative, and
Right.
it doesn't capture changes that have happened since the data.
right,
And that's where that kind of additional layer comes in. And Michael was actually just talking earlier about, and we talked last night in the
Yeah.
meeting about great projects that have been implemented recently or that are underway that really will help address some of what we're seeing. in that map.
For instance,
yeah,
just on to your point, Commissioner or Chairman
whatever.
Martin. I wonder, prior to 2022 or 2020 on that stretch of California was it a lot more red than we're seeing now?
Yeah.
In the yellow
That's
lines.
looking at too.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can't tell from this,
Yeah,
but
I can't tell from it.
Yeah, we put a traffic circle there. We changed the configuration of the roadway.
Yeah.
It's,
Road-
yeah, road
Right.
diet. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'll go ahead and answer you were asking about, is there anything that we could show about the impact that all of our past projects have made on the city?
Yep.
This data is not going to show that because a lot of our great projects like California Drive, Complete Streets north of Broadway, Caroline Complete Streets, these projects happened before this data period, won't be captured. And then the most recent California Drive two-way bike lane conversion with the road diet, not enough time has passed to really collect a substantial data set to compare before and after. But if that's something that the commission was interested in, we could definitely look into it, produce those reports. We just have to kind of do something more specific than this, which is citywide and generalized. And then I wanted to point out another thing about the high injury network. I think there was some digestion going on in all of our minds, like, does this network match with what we've heard monthly from the traffic sergeant? You mentioned that you hadn't necessarily heard about those incidents there, and why do those incidents then convert to the entire stretch of the roadway? And I think there's some explanation of the strategy there, which is that Vision Zero, it's not just looking at kind of what has happened, but also looking forward and making systemic changes. So, okay, we saw these issues at these intersections. Well, the same issues could arise at other similar intersections, and we should therefore look at them even though they haven't happened yet. So that's why I might see,
A little bit connected to the dots.
yeah, that status extended for the whole corridor.
Totally makes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you understand, being an engineer, the reason I asked about whether any of the work that you all have done have made a difference, because I'm looking for best practices. I'm also looking for lessons learned, right? That's why we put in temporary mitigation to see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't, we take it out, we try something else. So I'd love to see that data, but I'm sure you all have a book with all this stuff in it, or a database now, right? It's not like Ms. Wiseman said, it's not subjective. It should be objective when we make these decisions to the best of our ability, right? It should be based on data.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
The exercise with Lion Hope was really informative.
yeah,
Get to do that as often as we would like.
Yeah.
But I think a strong takeaway was that most of those things we did there were effective.
yes.
But you've seen them continue to be implemented.
Yep. Yeah, I live there. I can tell you firsthand what's effective, what's not. So, okay, any other go backs, second?
Want to briefly mention that
Sure.
I do remember from the police reports that there have been several things on Airport Road and Old Bay Shore, but they, like, I remember, you know, how the fatality and everything, but to me, our brain kind of skips over it because it's on the fringe. And also it happens in so intermittently that it seems, you know, it seems like nothing really happened. Although I also had that in my comments, is I was not aware that there were that many.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Okay,
just following up on your point.
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. So I would be curious to see with the community feedback overlay on top of this network, what that would look like, and to see if the input or the, you know, the feedback that you got maps also to the data that we have. And then also, will you be using this data? There's a separate, I think it's a committee or a council working on the El Camino project. And I know that El Camino is sort of out of the realm of this study, but obviously it intersects through the whole thing. And I know we have a lot of, we all get comments on a regular basis about what's going on in El Camino. So I'm curious to see if we'll use this data to work with that committee to inform them of what this picture looks like.
Mhm.
You know much about the process for El Camino?
I heard that sigh.
It's between me or Andy.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Sure.
You know, they're aware of this. I mean, that's why they're going out there. And again, a lot of those pedestrian improvements that we talked about are a result of the information that's out there. So we are, you know, the project will address a lot of this, right? Obviously, I mean, some of this stuff is also related to the roadway condition, I imagine, because of vehicles, if they're going fast on there, you're nuts because something's going to happen and it's probably occurred here. And again, signal upgrades that they're going to have will be, yeah, those will also improve the visibility, you know, whatever's missing back there. But those are, yeah, they've been out there a while. So while we haven't dropped this in front of them, they are aware of it. That's why, that's part of the reason they're doing this too, because there's a lot of, we'll say, liability or potential out there that they're trying to address, and that's why. So.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the question is the input from here going to be passed on?
Precisely.
Definitely, and the input has been communicated over time and has influenced the plan that they have. And that plan, the main core elements of it will be a major impact on safety. Simply, Andy mentioned, or Mr. Wong mentioned a major one, which is the roadway condition. Another one is the removal of trees, a very big issue, and then the upgrades to the most core elements like traffic signals. So these are major improvements that are in the project. And you know, once we dive in, I'm confident that most of the feedback on El Camino will be in the project.
Okay.
And if it's not, we'll definitely pass it on.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Syed. Commissioner Brown, did you have anything else? Everyone else had a second opportunity,
No,
one more opportunity.
No, I think I understand a lot better, so. thank
Okay,
you. So,
good,
other questions?
good. I want to offer the public an opportunity. Did you have anything that you wanted to bring up or? Okay,
Were there any previous reports like this that you relied on? I don't think I've heard of a report like this ever been done before. It's very concise. Was there anything previous that you were looking at that had been done to study the traffic in Burlingame?
Do you mean specifically a resource from Burlingame or?
Yeah, something that had been done maybe by a consulting firm or something, part of your work.
Well, in Burlingame, we could look at well, I'll say this is Burlingame's first safety.
Okay.
Formal.
Great.
So, to this, we're drawing on our experience with other communities.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
But to understand kind of what's going on in Burlingame, I think our primary sources were the general plan and the
Okay.
transportation plan and some of the.
There weren't any previous transportation plans going with the depth of.
Correct.
The highway.
The defensive side, that's the
Yeah.
what this commission does.
Very impressive. And then when you had the public input, you had summarized the results of the public input, but do you have the actual details of comments made by the public in the various areas?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think aligned with your question. So we just closed the survey, so responses are, we're no longer able to take on responses, but the survey is still up and visible.
Yep.
And one nice feature of the platform that we use is that anyone can go in and zoom into a location and look at what other people,
Individual
you
comments?
can look at individual
Oh,
comments from
excellent,
other
yeah.
people.
And is the report available online?
What we shared right now is not yet
Okay.
available online. But we do have a website for the project. It's more focused on an overview of the project, like what Vision Zero, we put together an awesome video that I encourage everyone to watch about Burlingame Vision Zero. So kind of just orienting people more along the lines of what I shared with the first half. And a bit about the schedule for the project.
Yeah. The Vision Zero concept was from Australia or something, was from
Sweden, yeah.
Sweden, okay, I know
Yeah.
Southern, yeah.
That's right. And Australia is doing a lot.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for your comments, appreciate it. And Ms. Wiseman, I just wanted to wrap up by thanking you for the report.
Exactly.
I also wanted to thank Commissioner Johnson for helping me solicit the website. She
Oh.
took, I put it on Nextdoor, she saw my post and she took it and she shared it with her friends at,
Marketing is my day job.
yep. Where did you post?
If you, a little trick to social media, the more you engage in a post, the more eyeballs it gets.
Yeah.
So I saw him post, please, come and comment. And so I posted it on, I think I commented and reposted
You
it.
did, yeah.
And then I also put it in a newsletter.
There you go, yeah.
We were wondering why the traffic increased that.
You can hire me tomorrow.
It was interesting, when I posted, 2 days later, there were 1,900 views of the post. So that was pretty good on Nextdoor. That was pretty good.
The only-
Little trick for all commissioner applications,
Yeah.
look for marketing backgrounds,
Yeah.
you know.
I also wanted to acknowledge Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Couchy for writing that very detailed metrics report and doing all that research. And I'm happy to hear that that was weaved into your
That's awesome.
report as well. So there was a lot of work. They spent, well, Commissioner Couchy spent almost a year. Commissioner Brown, since he's been with us for about 6 months now, has worked on that as well. So that was a big deal. And then Mr. Sy, thank you for all your hard work on this as well. So I think, this is really important to the city, and it's great to have all these people working on this and bringing, good ideas on how we can make it safer. So,
Before we wrap up, there
sure.
was a piece of feedback we were hoping to get, and it kind of stems from the kind of the history of collisions and topics that you've dealt with over the years in the TSPC. Is the network itself and the emphasis areas, do you feel like there's something that might be missing, or you would suggest we take a closer look at as far as the network and emphasis areas?
Well, this commission deals a lot with safety around schools. And that's, need to put that thing on here. Safety around schools, as well as the downtown areas. Those areas, I think, are well represented in this report. So beyond those two, those are my biggest concerns and what I've seen us discuss the most, trying to ensure the safety. Those are probably the highest traffic areas that we see. And I think those are covered in this report. Commissioners, any other thoughts on?
I would echo Commissioner Israelite's observation. And that is, moving together throughout the city, the pedestrians are, where pedestrians are most at risk. Since I've been on the commission, I've noticed more and more now just the busiest intersections and how dangerous they really are. And I'm thinking of El Camino and Howard, and I'm thinking of, I think Chapin is another one from El Camino. And it goes two ways. It's people are busy, they're moving fast, but also pedestrians are deep in their phones as they're crossing some of the most dangerous intersections. in this town, and everyone is looking down, right? Everyone is looking down and they're not paying attention. So I think where areas for mitigation to help pedestrians look up and or take more time or whatever it needs to be for them to cross the street safely. I would look at those corridors where we're seeing the most pedestrian injuries and fatalities. I think that would be a priority.
And I'll just add one thing, if you guys can take a look at the bike ped, that plan, and kind of overlap it with what you're looking at, as well as what we did to Chairman Martos mention of the work that Commissioner Cauchi did with my assistants. Just look at how those things overlap, because there was a lot of information in there about the bike ped plan, as well as pedestrians. And when you layer those things on top, you guys have already done this, but they all should work together and they shouldn't oppose each other. So that's the only thing that I would add is if you look at those things together and what you're working on, do they actually work in correlation with each other?
That's a good point.
Okay. I hope we gave you enough to think about. We certainly have enough for us to think about. We appreciate the report. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Weissman, Mr. Sy. I'll go ahead and close 6A and we'll move on
Thank you, guys.
This is one of the most important things.
to 6B. Yes, it is. City Threads.
This is a meaty meeting.
Update.
This is great.
All right. Where was the conference?
In Salt Lake City,
Not in Vegas,
Oh, not in Vegas.
not in Vegas.
so
And who went to the conference? You and, fun.
Right, Mr. Wong. Yes.
All right. So
I just have to add that while this presentation was going on, I believe Commissioner Johnson, I could feel her grinning like a Cheshire cat. The things that we talked about over this,
Absolutely.
we will get into it. All right. Thank you, Chair Martos. Again, just give you an update, and it's almost like what I did on my last 3 days
Mhm.
report. Again, we're talking about the city thread, the AMP accelerated ability playbook. So I'll give you a little brief background on it, but the goals, again, just let you know what city threads are, review the process that we've gone through to this point, and then what that is, the results of that. And then briefly, next steps, we haven't fully identified, but it goes to council and the mayor will be talking to. So City Thread, they're a national nonprofit whose mission is to accelerate projects that help move people safely through, efficiently, equitably through their communities. So that could be pedestrian projects, bicycle projects, safety projects. And Commissioner, former or still current Commissioner Cauchi connected the city with the organization, and she actually we provided her the information, but she actually was the one that did the grant application for it and was successful in obtaining it. So a lot of thanks to her on that. And the AMP, which has been done, I think this is their 4th cycle. We're part of their 4th cycle. Is an assistance program to help cities accelerate these mobility network projects. They select cities through this competitive project or application process. And then what they provide is an assessment of our current state of practice, where you take a look at that, what we're doing, what we can maybe do a little better, then action plan. And key to that is for improved partnerships among other deliverables, the deliverables potentially being other projects, or at least you see we're going to generate a list from the Vision Zero. We have a list from our Whitehead Master Plan, and those go together. We'll get into it, but the goal is to put it together, share it with the community, and be able to go hit them faster than we currently are. Again, the AMP goal is to overcome the barriers, which many of you have experienced and seen, where we go through, we're reiterating the project, we come back through. For staff, it'd be great to have that knowledge, like what we want, and then hit the ground running. So that's why, for myself, this is why it's appealing that we can just get going. We've got everything, the outreach is all hammered out, and we've got support, and it's not going back to you guys, back to council. So So it's the shared vision that they're trying to obtain. And then, and the key is solutions that work for everyone. So these aren't just, we're working on bike project, but we'll talk more about and how that goes through. So what is the AMP? It's a playbook, which is now here. Parts of it are here to achieve these mobility goals. And we have a goal that I'll share with you within 24 to 36 months. So that's getting it going and then having it built within that time. And here's the key. The way they find that they're suggesting is build coalitions to support. And that include business leaders, local leaders, community, faith-based organizations, anchor institutions. Mobilize these folks to help take action with us for the project. And then that would allow us to accelerate the project delivery. So again, this is all worked out. The coalition has these, and the community ones could be, bicycle folks, town businesses. We learned, hospitals, even national, what was it? I'm sorry.
It was American Heart
Pardon.
Association.
We get these groups involved, and there's different levels. We'll talk about this coalition that's formed. It's not just anyone to replace you guys, because no one could replace you guys, but it's a larger group. That way, I think everyone feels more confidence that this larger group has explored something, as opposed to where we're just and citywide. We're just not targeting the neighborhood, which is still important, but it'll be part of this. So it's trying to get more involvement. And then these are just 4 of the cities that they've, and I think 3 of the 4 have produced, as you can see, Austin, they installed 115 miles of new protected bike lane, side paths, intersection crossings. Providence, over 40 miles, obviously larger cities. We can talk more about Bentonville because they had representatives there, but they are moving forward, and Pittsburgh had 50 miles. And a lot of these agencies went from 0. We're a little ahead of it. Some of them didn't even have bike ped master plan.
Way ahead of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, again.
I mean, for a city of our size, we are.
No. And we'll talk more about it. We weren't the smallest city in this last cycle.
That's right.
So, okay, what's in it for my city? Again, this is as part of the process. The folks from AMP or from City Threads came out, they did a site visit and I can't remember, I'll have to look and see if I believe Chair Martos was interviewed, but a lot of the business owners, the bicycles advocates, who else? Council, staff, city manager. So they did an entire broad cross section of the community, and a lot of those folks weren't supporters of bicycle pedestrian plans. They've been here and said that. So we wanted to make sure that, again, to get as many folks as we can, and these folks are only here for 48 hours.
Yeah.
And so it was quick, but just enough to get it. And so they had that, the assessment of what we have. They took an assessment of our bike ped master plan, our general plan. They did not have a look at our Vision Zero, but they were aware of that it was underway.
And on that, do you mind if I add
Sure.
a comment? And most of the cities there, this initiative coincides with the Vision Zero initiative. It is seen as a way to accelerate the programs and projects that get prioritized from that plan and from those insights. We'll get a little bit more.
So kind of like this is a way to implement more efficiently that which you desire to build from Vision Zero.
I'll let you continue and then we can.
Sure. And then give us a roadmap in here of how to do it, right? There's certain steps and we'll talk about that. And then lastly, we were part of this in-person gathering where we met the other, not only cities that are going through it, they're at the same phase, they all just got a copy of this, but cities that have been successful and they've identified coalition leaders, their coalitions. I mean, some of them there were like 1,000 people in a coalition, at different levels. So that was key for us because we're not going to fit 1,000 people in here or any facility, but folks that just maybe want to be notified when something's coming, some that they're very interested and they're going to be ones that help out with the footwork of informing folks and coming to more meetings. So that was something, I think that was something you were just mentioning, concerned with, trying to get a wider reach of
Cross-section.
folks in the city. So here is what is essentially the complete AMP. We're really on that first step, not even a step, establish a shared goal. We're still trying to get to that. But that, as this says, acceleration relies upon a shared vision among community stakeholders. This goal must be bold and achievable. I'll share you that goal, where it is. Align partnerships. So we're communicating with the folks, the community organizations, the businesses. Resource partners, this one's kind of tied in. I'll talk about a little bit more about this one because this is a different effort than we've ever looked at. And then obviously build a network fast, right? Get it built, get those, when they're built, get it advertised, get support for it so folks know about it, and you kind of get the snowball. And then residents participate positively because the process is consistent to them and predictable. They know what more to expect. One of the comments that came back is they don't know what the expectation is. They come here, they don't know how long it'll take, and we've had those discussions. So really, we're partially completed here. We have a goal, and we have folks that we think that we may need to talk to. The next phase is the initiation phase, where you want to build the coalition, you want to start sharing what the projects might be, and understand where they fit in, where the coalition fits in. And then the last one is what we do, the campaign's launched, folks go through it, and we start building the network. Everyone's activated by, okay, we need to do this now. Everyone's mobilized, so there's folks see activity in it. So waves of support, if you want to call it that. So it's just not sitting and everyone's engaged. I showed you the copy of the report and some of the results from the report, like what works well. We have staff that can deliver projects. We've done it. Grants, going forward to the grant community, grant agencies. So we've done that. Business leaders, resident, and community champions understand the city's most pressing challenges. They are ready to support the city-led effort if they have meaningful pathway to engage the opportunities for change. And you've seen this for a lot of folks. It's like they show up here. We've got folks that also show up and say, we support a lot of these, but maybe not this level. And then the last one was, we have a high quality of life where business owners are deeply invested in the community, seeing their community thrive. We've seen that on the projects, the roundabout in California, the Burlingame station improvements, Burlingame Avenue itself. These improvements that incorporated better pedestrian facilities and some bike facilities. The community does support after they've seen it, and we've gone through that process, but we're trying to streamline that process because sometimes it puts multiple years out. So what doesn't work well? No single organization, entity, or leader holds a vision that is shared by everyone. Without a prescribed implementation program, progress is limited to piecemeal projects that don't offer the outcomes community members seek. Staff has never attempted to deliver projects at this scale. Internal processes and communication among the department will need to be rethought without sacrificing quality or authentic public engagement. Yes, so this gets us to the goal that they've provided for us, 10 miles of bicycle improvements, bike or ped improvements, safety improvements as well by 2028. So not at the level of the other agencies, but something that seems, and it's also, they don't want to make one easy, but their goal is to make it a little bit aspirational and shoot for that. And we've learned some agencies didn't hit that, but the goal is that we're moving forward and where we are in that process. So just because the goal's there, it's meant to push us a little bit. So the recommendations, acceleration. Burlingame will accelerate the planning, design, and construction of 10 miles of projects from its bicycle master plan by 2028. collaboration. No single department or team within the Department of Public Works can achieve the goal on their own. So that for us is to improve our collaboration with the other agencies, or not agencies, other departments. And again, with this takes a component that we do of outreach and trying to work with the community, puts it on someone else, allows us to focus more on this and moving towards a solution rather than bouncing back and forth. And we talked briefly about this, but it's a community-based coalition. Create an expansive, nonpartisan coalition with thoughtful recruitment from outside the bicycle community. An organized coalition is key to turning out support at the time and in a way that is most helpful to city staff and elected leaders. And this is something that came from all the advocates that two things on the coalition. There shouldn't be a city staff on there because sometimes there's different messages, but we're still working together. And the other is there shouldn't be a bicycle advocate I mean, folks will be there, but they shouldn't be ones that lead this because, again, as you've seen, it goes the other way sometimes too. I mean, they mentioned many times at our conference, bicycle advocate people turn the other way as well. So that kind of keeps it till we start expanding base. They're involved, but they're not leading it, because if any of those led it, then we can kind of see it might deteriorate to something else where it's, oh, this is just this is just this. So, and a key one is partnerships. So city and philanthropic investment should be dedicated to implementing the short-term improvements of the bicycle pit master plan. A people-centered approach to transportation planning moves residents from automobile dependency to community connected by pedestrian, bicycle, and transit networks, and is particularly important to low and moderate income residents and commuters. So this partnership is also part of this next part, fund development. Executing the AMP requires funding, and much of it can't or shouldn't come from municipal coffers. This is something different. Resourcing the coalition starts with hiring a coalition manager to devote full-time energy to this work, but does not end there. CityThread estimates that the philanthropic and business interests have the capacity to provide up to $2.5 million over 3 years of support to support community-based activities. So this AMP isn't a city funded. So many of these other agencies, again, the American Heart Association, they got funding from that. They get funding from these different sources, put it in a pot together, and that funds the person that is the key, right? I think pretty much, and we saw some excellent coalition managers there that are part of the community, but it's a position for them. They go through, they work with staff, they work with the community, they tell everyone, media, they ring up the coalition, like we need to mobilize now. So they're the key. And again, it doesn't come cheap. You know, this is up to over 3 year funding source or something for them to be able to drive that. That's what we're less than this, but there's a significant dollar associated with this for them, but it comes from outside sources. That's the key to this. That's something we've never done before or even looked at. Project delivery, Burlingame will create and test new methods of holistic project delivery where urgent safety improvements are most needed. These methods will seek to redefine public engagement, interdepartmental collaboration, and partnerships with the community supporters. So again, we do it, but it'll take us up to the next level. And a robust community engagement strategy will work with the underrepresented constituencies to more fully reflect community needs in the planning and implementation of new bikeway network projects. Community partners will connect resident and neighborhood concerns to the city work. So again, the coalition leader, that's their position or kind of effort now, is to get the community working together. And that's a tough one. So you have to find the right person. That's something huge. Again, and another thing is for them to, at each milestone, like obviously during the process, but even after the process, folks, you know, show up, make sure you support it. We've seen where it doesn't, and it drives you back, right? I mean, I think all the electeds would love to have all the support and keep going. So with that, I think the more important part is our discussion after about what we had experienced talking to the agencies who are successful at it and the ones that are about to undergo it with us. Again, city staff will review the AMP readiness assessment with city council, mayor, city manager, and then we'll see the process moving forward. We'll talk about more. I think the big thing for even myself, even though we had this for a couple weeks, is even talking to our other peers and the other one, that having the meeting we just went to, just just being able to touch it, gave everyone a different idea of than what's written in here. So with that, when we have the meeting, we will talk to the director and folks and say, here's what we understand it and how it benefited. It's a different way of doing things, but I think it gives everyone a better sense of this is what the community wants, as opposed to niche, small groups. But with that, we'll end the presentation, and myself and Commissioner Johnson will give little questions, and then, yeah, definitely there's gonna be a lot of questions, and give you our perspective on the.
Yeah.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
Before we
Add to-
we jump into
Yep.
one thing, I sort of stepping back from it, that's a lot to digest. You haven't been living in this document and been in all the meetings. So it's kind of like, where does this fit in the grand context of everything else that's
Yeah.
going on? And I think it's important to think about this as an accelerator for the good work that's already underway. So part of, I would say there's kind of three parts. One is the activation through advocacy. You've already started doing that with Vision Zero and getting that initial committee in place. And we already saw the benefit of that through the engagement on the website. Imagine that with a little bit more definition around, led by advocates that continued that great work to bring the voices to the room that have a point of view about safety. And it's not safety for bike head, it's safety for all, and it's mobility for all. So the one thing that this document also highly suggests is that we really talk about this as, and the second part of it is communications and marketing, the messaging, which is, it's not about bike ped, it's not about the city. We should be recommending and encouraging the city to think about developing a campaign around this that pulls in Vision Zero, that pulls in bike ped, that pulls in different elements. And the other cities that we met with in Salt Lake City have done this. Every city has a different twist on it. Andy and I Mr. Wong and I in the airport were talking about Burlingame Moves Together. And it's about supporting all types of mobility in the way we get around the city and how we become more connected with each other, because we've created safer streets, no matter how you decide to get from point A to point B. Again, that's just, we're brainstorming, but the messaging is really important. And then third, it holds a home, again, for all of the projects that are underway. And I think if you think about those three pillars, the city, we're going to help the city move forward with these key projects to make our streets safer. We'll do it under an umbrella, but it gives the community a window to have more engagement. And what they have found in their studies with other cities is that when you condense the cycle with high impact advocacy, the projects move a lot more quickly versus this pinpoint by pinpoint every time we have to go out and get feedback. People lose context of what they're giving feedback to. And so that's kind of, New Orleans went through this project. They built 30 miles in 2 years, and they didn't even have, I don't even think they had Vision Zero.
No.
They didn't have, they had some of their worst, the most economically impacted corridors. Their streets were a disaster. And you should have seen these pictures. I wish I had them in front of me.
Yeah.
He walked us through a good 3-hour session of how he was an incredible, and he was an advocate. He was from an advocacy group and the coalition that he built to work with the city to get this done. And it was an extraordinary couple of days. I am so glad we went. I could go on and on and on about the different stories that we heard, but I just want to strike the importance of what this means to the other things that come in front of us. So that's my tiny soapbox.
Just to add a little
Yeah.
more, for you, you saw obviously all those cities were much larger than us.
Yeah.
But the ones that, there were 3 cities that were in this process with us, Columbus, Ohio, Hood River, Oregon, as well as us.
Yeah.
Hood River, Oregon, the population's 8,500. Columbus, Ohio, it was,
100,
yeah, it was,
There-
yeah,
250, 250,000,
yeah.
100,000.
I think it was 200.
Oh, okay.
I was-
You said 100?
No, I said I used to live there. It was 150 when I.
Oh, okay.
No, it was like 200. I was thinking it was less, but now I was thinking of another city and then us. So we fell in between. My takeaway from a lot of this, and we talked about this too. I mean, obviously, this is for projects that we are, are in Vision Zero that we haven't touched.
Mhm.
But just some of the comments of having, one-on-one meetings earlier, talking to, again, when we present this, and again, the engineer versus someone in the marketing, it's like, we come up and like, here's the project, what we're doing to you in a way, we're going to impact you. But maybe the way the approach is, what can we do for you? And then, it's again, leading it a little better, a little different discussion. But just things like that and working earlier on. So that when we come here, it's not more adversarial with different groups. So we can try to get a lot of that more put in some of the projects that we have now. So that's something we'll take away from it, as well as, I was not necessarily part of this, but communication was huge, right? I mean, you saw this communication, you saw that in Vision Zero. The impacts of Vision Zero, I just had a chat with our director today, and it's just like and another one was, everyone comes here, we have a community meeting, come to us. It's more going to them where they are. So the
Yeah.
farmers markets, that was one, putting more sandwich boards out there with the QR code to lead you to the website to make it a little easier, especially something we found out, it's a lot of the coalitions, families, right? They're not attending because they've got other things to do. So to make it but they're a huge part of this, right? Because walking to school, going to the downtowns. So that's huge to try to involve them. But I mean, we maybe lost a commissioner because this gets a little busy and, things like that. So people are busy. So another way to engage them, because that's a huge part of it. I mean, we know business leaders, we go out to them, but just to broaden ourselves and be more available. So we've talked about that. So a lot more different type of outreach, not a lot of outreach.
Okay.
So what else
Questions on that side of the room? Commissioner Israeli, Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay.
I've paid attention to it from the beginning and looked at their website and the slides and everything. And I'm a little bit less excited about this and a little less rosy.
Okay.
And I've spoken to Syed, I think, about this. I don't know if I've spoken to you, Andy, I don't recall. But I have some concerns about this grant. And I'll try and spell them out. You may not agree, but it's, I think that if you go on their website, they talk about mobility and advocacy and efficiency. But really, on every slide, it's about bikes. They show bikes, they talk about bike paths. On their website, there's almost nothing about sidewalks or pedestrians. I find it a little disingenuous because I do think this is a bike advocacy project. And, even on the slide that you showed, that it said, a community engagement plan, and then at the end, it's planning and implementation of each bikeway network project, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's just no mention at all about other mobility issues. And I find that this is a little worrisome also because one of their slides on their website says, flood the dissension or the people who are against these projects, just flood it until you overcome it. I think overwhelm was the word that's used. I also do not feel that that is language that we use when we're talking about community engagement. It's concerning. You know, and this is stuff that they put on their website, so they're not trying to hide it. I don't like the idea of outside advocates. Like, why would we have someone who is a professional or who this is their main goal in life, sort of circumvent or go around public opinion? And sort of, it, to me, a lot of the language they use is that we are going to get this to happen. We're going to, you know, almost like a marketing thing. We're going to convince the public that this is what they want. I think we should listen to the public. And I think that a lot of the residents of Burlingame think that we have adequate bikeways as soon as we can connect, you know, for instance, the one on California, and a fair number of residents feel that that's even too much. If we look at the usage of the current bikeways we have, it is not great. And I keep hearing, well, if we just make connectors and build twice as many bikeways, then everyone's going to use them. But I think if we look at the demographics of Burlingame, we have a lot of young families. We have people taking kids to school, going to grocery stores, and a lot of older folk who riding a bike is just not going to ever happen in those particular demographics. Kids going to school riding bikes, great. Commuters from the BART station in Millbrae, maybe going to San Mateo. I haven't really seen that. I mean, even the bikeway that goes from Howard into San Mateo, I drive down that all the time and I rarely see it used. So I have a very different opinion, and I'm sorry, because I know you guys are very excited and you go to a conference and you hear about all this great thing. Well, I lived in Columbus, Ohio. The streets are flat and wide. We have a very different city, and it's extremely difficult to add more bike paths. In addition, we are increasing the number of residents. We're building multiple 500-unit apartment buildings. And I know Commissioner or Vice Chair Couchy would say, well, you know, they're all going to be bike riders. That's why they're close to a transportation hub. I think that's a very dangerous assumption to make. You know, maybe they are going to be bike riders, but I bet at least half will have cars. So we're whittling down our roadways for car traffic, while we're also greatly increasing, you know, the size of the city by 5–10%. I find that worrisome and something that we have to consider. I do think we have good bike facilities. I think, you know, we've already done a lot of great work. Some of the cities that you were talking about who, you know, they've added 50 miles, 30 miles, those cities are huge. Those are 500,000 people. If you take how many bikeways we've already built, miles of bikeways, I think we've done a really good job. And I think that setting what I heard for the goal for this project, City Threads, the goal is to add 10 miles of bikeway by 2028. Is that really what we're talking about, is building bikeways? I didn't hear anything about building bridges over to 101 to increase mobility along Bayshore, or any of the numerous things that we could do that would benefit all of the residents of this town. 10 miles of bikeway by 2028 means we could build from the BART station to San Mateo and back 3 times. I don't think that that should be a goal. I'm not sure that that's reasonable, and that those bikeways would even get used when we could take that money or that effort and do things that people really want and that would really get used. And I've been thinking about this a lot, so I'm sorry to talk so much, but I think it's really important because we're talking about going in a whole different direction based on what an admitted bike advocacy group that's very well organized and well funded and powerful is trying to, I feel like, impose on our city, as opposed to finding out what Burlingame residents really want and what would really work here. So.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that viewpoint. Commissioner Brown, do you have any
I think
comments?
there's, and I'm not, haven't been as engaged in City Threads, and certainly been introduced to it by Commissioner Couchy. So just, I think there's some pros and cons to this. I think whether it is bike paths or whatever we are trying to do, or Vision Zero, to actually have a group of people and advocates to help us get it done more efficiently and faster makes all the sense in the world. So, take Vision Zero, take whatever part of what we need to do in the city. I think having a group of people help us get there faster, I think should help us all get to those points. All right. Now, if it's the bike path, this particular plan is, and we all looked at this, the 10 miles are already part of the
Right.
the bike path. This is already part that we've already agreed. So to get it done in the next 3 years is just going to get done what we've already agreed to. It's not adding anything. It's not adding any more to what we've already agreed to as far as the bike path.
You mean we've agreed to build 10 more bikes?
No, it's in the plan already. We just haven't built it yet. It's in the bike ped plan already. That we've all agreed that these are the things that we should do in the bike ped plan. At least that's my understanding. So those 10 miles were things that we went through, and so it's connecting, north and south to the Bayshore Path or Bay. So it's all of those things are already part of the ped plan. At least that's my understanding. So it's already part of the plan. It's just trying to accelerate and have it done in the next 3 years. But that aside, I understand your point of view about, this is not, the bike path is a portion of what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be looking at pedestrians. We're supposed to be looking at, and it's everyone. It's inclusive to everything. So I understand where you're coming from. If
Just not what I'm hearing from them or in the plan.
yeah, so I understand that, but like I said, I think there's pros and cons of this. But my initial thought is having a group of advocates to help us move things along quicker, whether it's this path or not, the 10 miles, or whether it's Vision Zero. I would think having the advocate group to help with Vision Zero would be something that you would support, right? So that's where this is not, we're looking at one thing here, but we should be looking at all the things that are affecting Burlingame and how we're going to go forward with Burlingame. So I think you're definitely focused on this because it's about the bike path. So I think there's some energy around it. I'm not a self-help kind of guy. I'm not going to read a book about, that tells me what I should be doing when I already know what I should be doing. And I think that's what this kind of feels like is, we've got a group of people here who are very intelligent, who are involved in the city. If we could find another group that can help move this along, help with funding, I'm all for that. So that's where my head is. It's just, I'm not focused on the 10-mile bike path.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something that we've already talked about, and we'll probably, and that's going to get done, whether we have city threads, this part of city threads or not. That's already what we've agreed to. So the other part of it is, do we have an advocacy group that helps us move things along faster? And I would think that that's probably a good idea. And that's my point of view.
Okay, appreciate that.
Chair, sorry, could I?
Hang on,
Okay.
hang on. It's getting very tense.
No, I just wanted to
Um,
throw a little bit back in there to see if it
one moment.
changes the discussion.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Wong. So let me,
Go ahead.
let me say something. So we have opposing views, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this commission's about. I would prefer that you speak to the chair and not speak to an opposing commissioner on things so that we don't have a little, back and forth going on here. Really, we're supposed to speak to the chair.
Okay,
No.
I'm feeling a little tension right now. and
Oh, no,
not-
I'm
I'm
fine.
not concerned. I'm concerned about it.
No, and I
Um,
wasn't.
Just, and
I'm not.
general.
I didn't take it.
In
That way at
general.
all.
Okay,
no,
all right,
no, that-
all right.
that wasn't.
So, okay, so let's defuse
I
it a little bit.
understand.
Okay, Mr. Wong, go ahead.
You know,
And I'll go to you, Commissioner Israel, and Commissioner Johnson, if you want to add something, but go ahead.
while it was a great time with Commissioner Johnson,
Yeah.
I don't, not taking anything away from her, but I share your, prior to going there, and I haven't taken all the Kool-Aid, but I share your skepticism because I didn't want, the last thing I need is to have another group
Right.
to work with to further divide, the responsibilities. So going there and talking to the folks that implemented, asking them, it wasn't just that we all sat in the room, we all asked questions. We did breakout, so we were able to talk to them. A lot of it is what we ultimately accomplish, where the project started here and it ended somewhere in between, right? Truesdale Drive. Everyone asked for this. We looked at it, we backed off, everyone, we talked about it, and we came to here. So there's still that aspect of, we'll call it compromise, but even the coalition leader, and that's another kind of correction. This isn't an advocacy group. This is a coalition of a broad base.
Yeah.
And that's more important because it represents, there are people that are counter to it. There are families. It's not another advocacy group that's knocking. It's not a Silicon Valley bike coalition saying we want this. It's looking at everyone's concerns earlier on and then everyone getting a better understanding of it. So, and City Threads, while they have all this on their website, they're just kind of the resource of like, here's how you select a coalition leader. Here's some of the process. They're not jumping in and running it. They're just more of a resource like, how do you do this? How did the other folks do that? So they're not coming in here. The coalition person, and in all the cases, they were residents of the city, or I think one of them was a newer resident, but we're not plucking someone from somewhere else saying, here's how we did it in Boston, here's how we did it in Bentonville. This will be someone, and we're still scratching our head like, where's that person exist, right? Offhand, we couldn't tell you who it was, but we haven't gone through the process of maybe selecting someone. How do you find that person? Because I looked at those folks and we're not worthy or something, because you have to have the energy, right? You have to have, again, reasonable, be able to see all views, but have a good background. And that's a big push. There's a lot of time for someone like this, right? To be able to keep being motivated. But but that was huge. I went in there, I was like, I don't want to have a group just to say we're pushing this. And that's why I think having a larger coalition as opposed to a smaller one was a little troublesome to me, because of, we get folks say, hey, what about this? And then they come. But having a more broad, and I think that builds more confidence, because, we do surveys here, right? We get a good response. Sometimes, maybe 50 people out of 200, but having a larger base, that I think it makes our decisions a little more clear, like more cross-section of the city as opposed to a smaller cross-section of the city had. Even though we do our best outreach, right? E-news, we send out notices, but we get so much back. So if we can somehow broaden this and get everyone involved, so everyone has a bit of a say, more people, I think to me that feels better for us if we can get to that point. I'm not saying we're anywhere near that, but the process of doing that is appealing on our end. The other stuff of how we get there with the costs and something, that's a different discussion, not for this group, but just, I understand your concerns, because I don't want to be building all this and then being here and more people upset. But if we can get where, okay, we understand the constraints the city has, we understand what you want, and get those groups to come together and work collaboratively, I think that behooves the city greatly, because then the process moving forward after this, we're coming here once, we're going to council, and then we push it through, would be great. It'd be able to, and that's how you achieve the goal, is you get everyone buy-in early, everyone's in agreement, so there's no hurdles to go through, and you're there. So if we can get there and have everyone involved, the perfect scenario, I think that's what we're shooting for. But we're still in the academic exercise of talking about it. We're not anywhere near doing this, but again, talking to those folks that have done it directly and then giving them the hard question, like, how much did this cost? How did this happen? How did you deal with this? And they having, response or, oh, that wasn't easy. I had to do this. And then, but that's the better part because, obviously you talk to the City Thread folks, they want to paint it and they have to, right? Because that's part of trying to engage more agencies, but they were fair too, because they tell us that that's why they brought these folks. They could have just told us this and given us the nice sheet of like, here's how many miles these folks did and then called it a day. But having this meeting with the other folks was positive for that, for sure. Because while I'm still have my doubts on it, I am more open. Like I can see the path forward a little bit more than I previously did. It's not, we're not going to have buffered bike. We're taking away parking. That's all part of the discussion. So that's all. I saw how disappointed you were, but I just
Chair, if I may.
make sure everyone's understanding.
Can I, so I want to add something and then you can conclude, okay? And we'll end this discussion. Can I just
Well,
add a couple things?
yeah, no, yeah, please.
I haven't had a chance to say.
Yeah, yeah.
No, and if
Sorry, Chair.
Did you want to add something else?
I can add it later. I just wanted to,
I'm going to let Commissioner Israelet finish.
okay, of course.
But
Oh,
if
okay.
you want to add something now, and then I want to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's really important on where we are in the process is that I think the notion of the shared goal and having a common definition of that is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so if we want to revisit that as a commission, what are the different things that we would put under that umbrella that come from Vision Zero, that come from this project, that come from our bike ped plan code? So that's sort of the step one. Step two, I didn't start this project, but I believe it was started. And now having been on the commission for 5 months, there's a lot of the problem that we're really solving for here isn't 10 miles of bike lanes. The problem that we're solving for is how we can be more efficacious and efficient in getting some of these projects done that are agreed upon by, they're brought by the city and delivered by the city and agreed upon by council and this commission, so that we can reduce the pain and the number of meetings and the number of steps it takes to see the good change happen. And then how do we also involve the public in that process in a way that they feel their voices are heard, that they're not feeling like the city is doing things to them, but they are coming forward and saying, this is what we want. And so that is sort of, okay, nirvana, fine. But I think that is what precipitated this particular project. And I think that was the spirit of it. It wasn't to build 30 miles of bike lanes. So I want to make sure that I know what their website says. I know what's, but we do have it in a bike ped plan to do that. But I believe wherever we land on this, it's about how do we make Burlingame a better place for all types of transport in a way that makes sense for our city, right? And so that's the spirit. I just wanted to make sure that you understood, I think, the spirit of how Mr. Wong and I are approaching this and what we pulled from it that we thought might be new ways still to be investigated to see how we improve that and how we get the good work done. So that's where my head and my spirit is. And it's not about, we need 10 miles of bike lanes.
And even, I'm sorry, third chair.
So no.
Chair doesn't.
No.
We'll stop.
No. So I partially agree with Commissioner Brown. I partially agree with Commissioner Johnson. I think if it accelerates our process, great, because our projects take way too long to get approved and implemented. I'm all for that. Whatever we choose, I don't know how 10 miles of bike lanes got prioritized, but whatever we choose, kind of up to council and engineering, how we move forward with this, but I am 100% behind. We need to accelerate our process. It takes way too long. And yeah, we're not going to do this to the public, let the public, feel like they're part of this much earlier. And so it'll come here, it'll be a lot smoother when we see these projects and we vote to move it forward to council. So that I'm 100% behind. And, in the past, I've asked the director, why do things take so long? And he sent me a list of 29 projects that you all were working concurrently.
Yep.
So, that's crazy with 3 engineers. So that's another reason why I think this could help us. So that's really what I'm behind. What the projects are, I don't think we should build bike lanes just to build bike lanes. I don't think we should build bike lanes where it's not safe. We kind of voted against that. Some of us for Truesdale didn't think it was safe. And I think council supported that. They didn't think it was safe or it wasn't ready. It wasn't fully baked. But we need to look holistically that there's more than just bikers in this city. And so if we're going to prioritize things, we should consider other projects that we could use as a proof of concept that we can accelerate something with this program. That's what I would stand behind, what I think makes sense. What the particular project is, I don't know yet. I can't say what I would support. But with that said, I'm going to let you conclude, Commissioner Israelit, and then we're done with this topic.
I just, I hear what you're saying, but that wasn't what was presented.
Me?
Well, I hear what everyone's saying.
Okay.
But that wasn't, I'm speaking to the chair.
No, you didn't.
No, I hear what you're saying.
You collectively.
Mr. Wong.
Okay.
Yeah, all of you all.
Got it.
Commissioner.
Got it.
I hear what you're saying. That was not what was presented on their website nor in tonight's package. So what I'm hearing you say is that we can make our projects that we approve move forward more efficiently, but that is not what was spelled out. I felt like this was just another way for bike advocates to get something done in our city that maybe people didn't want to get done. The 10 miles of bike lanes, we've already built the one on Carolan, the one on California. So we already have, is there 10 additional miles that we're supposed to build?
And that was just the one clarification to make. And
Yeah.
I don't think we should be saying bike lanes because even the other
Because
agents,
we have bike
Sharrow,
bars, Sharrows. So
but even, that's what this,
Facility.
It was part of the.
yeah, so we've already.
and maybe that's a comment
Out
we
of the-
could make on this because they did include pedestrian projects when we talk. And again,
So if we're talking about getting things done more efficiently with our limited staff and the many projects we have available, if we're talking about, we think Vision Zero, these things would be really great and important, then I'm okay with city threads, but that is just not what was presented. I mean, not by you all, but just, what their talking points are. So if we're all in agreement that these would be city projects that we think would be best and Vision Zero might recommend and the public would like to see, and we're going to make it more efficient, that's a very different thing than what was on their website or in this slide deck. Does that make sense?
oh,
Yeah.
I just want to be
Agreed.
cautious.
Yep. Agreed. Okay. All right. All right. Wonderful points of view. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the
Came to an
presentation.
agreement.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Wong, I would recommend that council watch this before they, this coming to them
no,
soon? No?
your chair will be talking to the mayor and city manager and the director. So this isn't on council's.
Okay. All right. All right. Very good. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, commissioners. Very robust conversation. Very robust. Appreciate it. Let's move on and we'll go, let's see. Informational items, no public comment, nothing. No community group updates, nothing.
No.
No. Already had the police department report. Excellent. Any communication from commissioners? Anything? No? Mr. Valesco sent us
Oh,
wanted me to take a bike ride with him, or some of us take a bike ride with him. Did you see that? You get copied on all our emails, right? If it goes to.
Yeah, I think I saw that one, but I might have been
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. So I generally, I wait
One
for
through
you to
Carol.
respond unless you ask me to.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the one Carolyn, right?
Yeah. 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 So,
I'll take care of that one.
all right. All right. Appreciate that. That was the only communication I had. Anybody else? Anybody else have any? Nope. Nope. Nope.
I assume when you ask about communications, you're not including the emails that we all receive like
No.
during the month.
No. No. Because we all see it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think we're good. All right. We'll move on to committee reports. Nothing 8A, no. Hillside Drive. Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Israelit.
Just
Commissioner
where are we
Or-
on progress?
Through chair, yes, I just haven't had time to go back to pick, I think we had broken down to look at which intersection.
Yeah.
For the crosswalk. And then since then, I've also attended a school, the meetings the city has with the school district. And I think we received an email, but there's discussion again, further up. Like we talked about improvements at Alvarado and Hillside. And then the next intersection upward, stop control at Hillside Circle
Right.
and Hillside. And so I'll take a look at that one too. So now we've just gotten another block, I guess, to look at just changes there to improve pedestrian. I think I've went through there and there's some changes I think that we can do that are not changing what's out there, but enhancing what's out.
You mean west of Alvarado?
Exactly, west of.
But that shouldn't delay what we're doing.
No. So I just need to get out and just frankly, just between running off out of town, out of state and other things, I haven't got to it, but I'll try to get to it shortly and then we can get those in.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Let's see. KPIs, Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Couchy's not here. I think that committee is
Son.
pretty wrapped up, right? You guys
It- it
delivered
is,
your
yeah.
report?
Since we had our special meeting,
Mhm.
last month, right? Last month.
Yeah.
I think we've presented everything we presented.
Yep.
and it's Already in the hands.
Moved forward.
So
Yep.
I think that committee could be.
We can disband that, Mr. Wong?
Okay.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that?
I believe
Let's see, it wasn't,
have previously,
it was
but it,
an ad hoc committee.
It wasn't-
The city attorney had told me we needed to vote to initiate a new subcommittee or committee, but that is up to the chair's
Chair to
discretion
disband it?
assign and disband.
Okay.
Assign members.
So I think we can disband that. I think that's safe.
we'll
Okay.
take that off.
And then ECR renewal, Commissioners Israelit and Brown, anything coming up? Anything coming up?
Still in a holding pattern.
Yeah.
And I think the last, they were supposed to present and I'll talk to the assistant director to find out when they might be ready. Cause he's the one that's on it, but it does change. I think it's changing in our favor, most recent one.
We'll be coming up to this days with our walkers.
Councils, let them know. So,
Actually, we'll be in the potholes in El Camino.
Right.
I refuse to use the walkers. I will limp to the meeting.
We'll be swimming with the fishes.
All right. Okay, so that finishes up item 8. Item 9, future agenda items. Mr. Wong.
got a couple that we'll talk at our pre-agenda meeting.
Yep.
So,
We will need to select a new vice chair. Our vice chair is going to be moving on. I think she'll be here one more meeting if we meet
Oh.
in July. If we meet in July. So it sounds like you might have some agenda items for us. Council recess is what, in August?
In August,
Yeah,
no, they have one meeting in July.
okay,
So I think they take, and one meeting in August.
okay,
That's the case.
okay.
So the plan is, because I will be, yeah, because I'm not able to attend the interviews this time around.
Yep,
The end of this month, they will be, towards the end of June, they will be interviewing
End of-
new potential commissioners.
okay,
And then they will, I think the goal is to make a decision July meeting.
okay.
And then, yeah, that's when we'll be back up to.
So will our new commissioner be with us for our July meeting?
That's the thought. I'll
That's the plan?
have to double check. If not, definitely by August. But
Okay.
I think that's the push.
And do you know how many candidates?
6.
6
Whoa.
for one position? For one it's a partial term position.
There were 4 when I got slipped.
Must be
Okay.
Commissioner Johnson's marketing that's.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, wow.
Just saw
Okay.
who recently there said, oh,
Oh, we got to follow his.
yeah.
status.
follow
I've talked to 2 of them.
All right, well, very good. Well, I think we can probably wait till the new commissioner, if, let's see. If we are going to have a new commissioner, then we should probably vote for a new
Chair.
vice chair. No, chair, not chair, vice chair.
Yeah.
I mean, you can vote for a new chair, but you have to kick me out first.
Sorry.
We're not doing that.
Okay, all right. All right, I think that was it. So I think we're done. Thank you all very much for your feedback. Sorry if I cut anybody off. I
No,
All good.
no,
think it's rolling.
honestly, all good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all- I thought it was.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
We had a lot,
Well, it was
lot of
content.
information.